Now it's time to look at the remoting part of your PowerShell. So remoting is the core feature, the main feature of PowerShell, which allows you to manage a single or multiple computers remotely from one place. So as part of remoting, there are two things which we are going to see. First is we are going to see how to do remoting first. What is remoting? We'll take some theoretical overview of WinRM service. Then we'll see how to do remoting from one computer to another computer, one to one. And there is something called as one to many, wherein from one computer, if you want to run commands against multiple other computers. And when you're doing this, the output that you get is in a deserialized format. So we will try to understand what is the meaning of deserialized object. So to begin with, let me give you a brief introduction to what is the current setup. We have a domain controller here, Windows 2012 machine. This is the domain controller, and on the other hand,
Samandra, I am not able to screen.
oh sorry, I forgot to share my screen. So to take the demo of this emoting thing, I have set up two Hyper-V machines. One is a domain controller, that is one 2012 machine here, and we have another member server which is just member of the domain. This does not have any role installed on it. It is just a member server. So from this member server we can connect to the domain controller or vice versa. So the first thing for remoting to begin with is remoting in PowerShell depends on this service called WinRM. If this service, if you check the status of that service, let's wait for this to load up. Okay. So here if you run this command get-service WinRM, this service need to be running. That is the first thing. And this service, even if it is running, your computer should be set up to allow remoting from remote computers. It should allow incoming connections from other computers. To enable that, on the computer to which you are trying to connect, you need to run this command, enable ps remoting -force. This will forcefully enable remoting on any computer, and when you run this command there are multiple things that will happen inside the computer. It will check the status of this WinRM service. If it is not running or if it is in disabled state, it will enable that service and it will start that service. Another thing that it will do is remoting works on port number 5985 and 5986. So it will enable those ports. But since it is already set up on this computer, it is saying it is already set up. So this you have to do on the target machine first. Now the question comes, how do you do this for multiple computers? Unless remoting is enabled, you cannot remotely do anything on that server. So this can be done from group policy. So anyone who knows about group policy, you can find out how this service can be set to forcefully running mode, or how this service will be enabled through group policy. So here, if we want to cover details about group policy, how to manage group policies, it will be too time consuming. It is not part of our agenda to show how group policy works. But in any organization, if you request for this to the Active Directory team to enable this service and to make this service running on all the servers, then they will be able to do that for you using group policy. So after enabling the remoting on the target machines, next step is to check the connection from the client machine.
Sir, can I ask you one quick question here?
Yeah.
So even policy, they use PowerShell to the other way.
Your voice is breaking. Can you please come again?
One second, let me see. I can hear my voice. My question is, even controller, will use the PowerShell to do it, or
No. When
to update us?
you have to enable this from the domain controller, you don't need a PowerShell. From group policy, you can deploy it on all target machines.
Okay.
In group policy settings, you can define that this service should be running or enable PS remoting. You will find this.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Now, after making the remoting, or after enabling the remoting, now let's try that from the client machine, which is the member server here.
We have to ask Windows to enable VRM
Yeah, enable WinRM.
under the group policy, right?
Yeah. Was that a question for me?
Does that mean forcefully enabling the remote services?
Sorry, your voice was breaking. So after enabling remoting on the domain controller, so we are taking the domain controller just for example. You can enable remoting on any machine, whether it is a client machine, server machine. You can do remoting from any machine to any machine. The only thing is, on the target machine, enable PS remoting command should have been run. Remoting should have been enabled. Okay, so next thing is, we are going to talk about how to do one-to-one remoting. So this is the domain controller. Let me keep this window small so that we don't have to scroll back and forth.
Ravindra, just type one question. You can see that.
Okay. See, after enabling WinRM on domain controller, see, you are not enabling WinRM on domain controller group policies. See, let me explain once again. See, when you are enabling it through group policies, it's not equivalent to running this command, but we are just making sure when I say WinRM service should be in running state through group policy, we are just making sure that WinRM service should always be running. For enabling the group policy, remoting through group policy, let me show you if I can show you that setting. Group policy. See, this is the policy that you need to set. One second. Windows, yeah, Windows PowerShell here. This is the one. Allow remote server management through the WinRM. You have to enable this, and after enabling this, to whatever servers you apply this group policy, for those servers, it is then it is equivalent to what you have asked. Then it is equivalent to running enable ps remoting -force. When you are using this policy, then it is equivalent to running enable ps remoting -force. But if you are just making sure that WinRM service should be running, then you are taking care of only that service, and that can be done using group policy preferences. There is something called as group policy preference extensions. Using that, you can make sure that that service should always be running. Okay, this is the main. If you take care of this, it will take care of enabling ps remoting on all the target machines where this policy will be applied. So when you do that, these are the things which
Yeah,
you should
after
do.
enabling,
Yeah,
we need to mention the list of servers.
no, you don't need to restart the server.
No. We have to mention the list of services.
Sorry, you have to mention what?
List of servers.
Restart servers. Yeah, it is better if you just type it here. Okay, list of servers. No. That is not how you apply the group policies. How do you apply group policies? You will create a group policy object. So this is the group policy object which is created. You can link this group policy object to a domain or to some OU. So currently it is linked to the entire domain. So all the servers within this domain will get it. But if you want to link this only to one particular OU, like India OU or US OU, you have to link that policy object here. See here, right click, link an existing GPO. So if there is a target list of servers to which you want to apply this policy, you have to put those servers in this OU. After putting the servers in this OU, you can right click and click on this link existing GPO and select the group policy object that you have created for that purpose. Got it? Okay, so after enabling the group policy, what happens? Or when you run the command enable PS remoting, these things will happen. WinRM service will set to automatically listen to the network request for HTTP transport. It will allow WinRM service to receive request over the network. Configure the Windows firewall policy to set exception for this port 5985. As I said, PowerShell WinRM uses 5985, or PowerShell remoting uses 5985 for HTTP traffic and 5986 for secured HTTPS. Now here you can apply the filter. For example, if you want this policy to be enabled only for a specific list of IP addresses, you can give the IP address range like this. But if you give star, it will enable it for all the IP addresses. These are the IP address filters. For IPv4 you can do like this. For IPv6 you can do like this. So unless you want to filter based on some IP addresses, you don't need to provide any filter. You can just give star. After you click on enable, give star in both of these. It will enable PS remoting for all the IP addresses within that OU. But if you want to exclude, you have to provide the range like this. Any questions so far? Okay. So the path for this, just to give you once again, policies, administrative templates, Windows components, under that Windows remote management, WinRM, and WinRM service. After applying that policy, you can just run the command gp update /force. It will update the group policy immediately. Otherwise, it will wait for automatic refresh time, which is 90 minutes. Every 90 minutes, that group policy refresh will happen. So if you don't want to wait for 90 minutes, you can forcefully give gp update /force. Okay, this is we have done on the domain controller. Now let me show you the current files and folders on domain controller, just to give you some idea about how remoting will work. I am creating a test folder here, folder on DC. Okay, now from here, to connect to a remote computer using PowerShell, the command is enter PS session, and here you can provide the computer name as DC1. So on this computer, the host name of this computer is DC1, and you need to make sure you are able to ping to DC1 before you try to enter the PS session, because that is the basic requirement. Unless you are able to ping to that computer, you cannot enter into the PS session for that computer. Now, since I am already logged in with domain user account on this computer, I don't need to provide credentials separately. But if you are connecting to a computer where there is a different set of credentials that is required, you can use hyphen credential, and here you can give the username using which you want to connect. So the domain name in this case is itpogo.com / username administrator. Now when you hit enter, it will ask you for the password. After supplying the password, if you observe the command prompt is from domain controller. This is not your local command prompt. Now here, when I say cd / and dir, this folder is the folder which we have created on domain controller. So you are currently on domain controller connected remotely through PowerShell remoting. Now whatever command you give here, for example, if I give the command for deleting this folder, or if I give a command for creating a file, that file will get created on the target machine. That folder will get deleted from the target machine. So here, just create a test file here. This is test out file test.txt. So currently, if you go to domain controller, on that folder, currently there is no file. But from here, when I run this command, that command will affect the target machine, and this file has been created there. This is called one-to-one remoting. Now there are some things that you need to keep into consideration when you are enabling PS remoting. If any of your network adapters, when you right click and go here, open a network and sharing center, if any of your network adapters are marked as public, you know, when you are creating the network, that time there are different options. This is your home network, public network, or office network. So if there is any network card which is marked as public, then you will get error while enabling PS remoting. That is for security purpose, because once PS remoting is enabled, anybody from any network will be able to connect to your computer like this. So to prevent unauthorized access from public networks, by default PowerShell will not allow you to enable PS remoting on a computer where public network is available. But if you still want to enable remoting even after knowing the risk of having a public network on the computer, you can use this option -skip network profile check, and it will allow you to enable remoting even when you have a public network card or a network card marked as public on your computer. Okay. So this is one-to-one remoting. We are still on that target server. To exit to your local computer, the command is exit PS session. You are back to your local computer. Now when you are connected to a remote machine, if you run commands like get service or any other command, the output that you get is not from your local computer. It is the output from the remote computer that you are able to see on your local machine. Any questions so far? Okay. Now, next thing is one-to-many. For connecting to a remote computer or connecting to multiple remote computers from remoting, see, in this example, at a time you are able to join only one computer using enter PS session. But when you have to connect to multiple computers for running some command, the command is invoke command. Using invoke command, you can specify multiple computer names here. So I am providing DC1, and currently I have only one computer. That's why I am providing DC1. Otherwise, you can provide multiple computer names by giving a comma. So in this environment, currently there are only one remote computers in this Hyper-V setup. So I will give one. Assuming that there are two different computers, I will give DC1 once again. So this is how you can specify multiple computers using invoke command, and there are two things now. First is either I can run a script block. Script block will be set of commands given inside curly brackets. This block of commands will be executed on the target machine and the results will be shown locally on your computer. For example, if I run command like get -service, and suppose I want to restart bits service, so what I will do, restart -service. So you can create a pipeline also within this code block, the script block. So after restarting that service, when you give hyphen pass through, you will be able to see the output also. Now in such cases, when you have to connect to multiple computers, you can provide the credential that you can use for connecting to that computer if you are not using the same credentials. If you are using the same credentials using which you are logged into this computer, you can skip this credential parameter. Otherwise, it will ask you for the password. You can give credentials like this. Okay. So it is connecting to remote computer, assuming that these are two different remote computers. This time the difference is, it will also tell you, see what is the difference between running this command locally and running this command through invoke command on remote computers. This fourth column will get added, wherein it will show you against which computer this command was running. So here you can give n number of commands. or if you want to read the list of computers from a text file, put it in a new line separated format in a text file and use get content, and it will read one single computer at a time from that text file and will run this set of commands. Now this was the case where we want to run a script block. Let me create a script. Simple script I will create. So here under temp folder, let's create a script. In that script, what I will write, dollar host name is equal to env color computer name, and write host I am from dollar host name. Simple script. Let's save this in temp file, temp folder. Sample.ps. So earlier we have ran a command on the target machine. Now let's try to run a script on the target machine. Now here, instead of script block, I will use hyphen file path, and what is the name of that file? Sample.ps. Now this time I am not providing credentials because I am already logged in with the same credentials. Now let us see the output. So this command or this script, it is available on local computer. So when you run this invoke command, what happens is it will copy this script to the target machine. On the target machine, it will execute that script and it will show you the results back on this computer. Any questions so far? Are we all on the same page? Everyone is getting what is going on? Any confusion? Okay. That is how you do one-to-many remoting. Now, last thing that we have to discuss as part of this is what is deserialized object. So when you are running a command on a remote computer like this, for example, when I run this command get service, just one command. So the output of this command, when you are getting on your local computer, there is a small difference between when you run this command locally and when you run this command against a remote computer and see the results locally. The output object that you get here, now there is a difference between the output object that you get here and when you get the output object from a local command. To understand that difference, let's pipe the output of this command to get member. And run this command locally. get service bits and pipe it to get member. First, analyze this. When you are running this command against remote computer, the output that you get here is deserialized system.serviceprocess.service controller. This deserialized means there are few things from this output object which are removed. Now if you observe, the methods like restarting the service, starting the service, refreshing the service, those methods are removed because when you run this command against a remote computer, it is executing that command against the remote computer, producing whatever output has been produced. It will bring back that output on your local computer. After that, the connection is closed from the remote computer, and since the connection is closed, if you try to use that output object for restarting the service or starting the service, that will not work because the connection is already closed. That is called deserialized object. Deserialized means only the offline data, the data which is captured from the remote computer and which can be shown online, only that data is preserved. Rest everything which requires the open connection to that computer will be removed from the output object. Now if you run this command locally and see the output, you see these methods: stop, start, refresh, pause, close, and all those things. These methods are not there because once the command output has been captured, the output will be deserialized. Deserialized means anything which requires the open connection or anything that requires the active access to the output object, those things will be removed. For starting a service, you need to be in a live connection with the output object, which is the service from the remote computer. So in this case, bit service. But when you are on a local computer, you are already in the open connection. But when you are getting this from a remote computer, the connection will be closed after getting the results from the remote computer. However, whatever you want to perform, for example, if you want to restart this service, though you are not able to restart the service, after piping the result of this complete command to the next command in the pipeline, you cannot do that. But if you want, you can put anything within the script block itself. There is a difference between putting something inside script block and piping the result of this entire thing to some other command in the pipeline. If you put this pipeline inside the script block, this entire set of commands will be executed on the target machine at once. But when you run this command, then outside the script block, when you pipe the output of this command to something else, the connection is closed after the script block is ended. So anything which is outside of the script block cannot get access to the target machine. Anything which is inside the script block only can get access to the target machine. That is called deserialized object. Any questions? Just tell me whether you have understood this concept or did I confuse you? Is it clear?
Can you repeat deserialize one more time?
Okay. See, when I'm running this command get service against a remote computer, I am able to see the status of those services, whether it is running or whatever. So this output that I see on my computer, this output is coming from the remote machines, these two remote machines, right? So how this output has been generated? The script block contains the commands that need to be executed on the target machines. So this entire script block has been executed on the target machine and the commands are brought back on the local machine. So while bringing back these commands on local machine, there are certain properties, not properties, there are certain members from the output object that are removed, and this new output object which is generated is called deserialized object. The results which are coming from a remote computer will be deserialized. What is the meaning of deserialized is anything that requires access to the remote computer, anything that requires open connection to the remote computer will be removed from the output object. What are those things which might require an open connection to the remote server? The examples are, if we take a look at the local instance of similar object, there are methods like starting the service, stopping the service, refreshing the service. These operations cannot be performed on the remote machine based on the results that we got, because after getting the results back to the local machine, the connection is closed. Now after connection is closed, if you run the command, for example, if you save this inside a variable like bit service, $bit service is equal to invoke command, whatever computer names, and script block get service bits. So the output object which contains this, a bit service object, service controller object, will not have a method for restarting the service, because after executing this command the connection is closed. Now if you give $bit service object dot restart or $bit service object dot start, it will not work because that method is not there. Look at the output of get member. The methods for restarting, stopping or refreshing service does not exist here, because deserialized object can show only offline data. So in this case, what is the offline data? Only the property values from that command. You can see only the values of the properties which are fetched from that command. Any actions that need to be performed on that object will not be available because the connection is already closed. Is it clear now?
Yeah, okay. Pipe it to GM, what does it mean?
I want to see what are the properties and methods I am getting from the remote object that I am fetching. Get member.
Okay.
Get member.
Can script object can it have a complex functionality within it?
No matter how complex you want to make it, you can make it. If
Meaning, I want to write even 10 lines, so there is no restriction on
you can
what
write
can be written in that.
10,000 lines, man.
Oh, okay.
See, what will happen when you run a script against the remote computer? What is going to happen? See, here in this, I have written only 2 lines. So what will happen when you give this command, invoke command, computer name? Suppose you are giving here 10 computer names and giving the script file path. So this script file will get copied to all those 10 computers in some temporary folder. PowerShell will execute that file on the target machine, and whatever is the output which is generated on the target machine, it will show it on your screen. Got it?
So what's the difference between this PS session and the invoke command?
Enter PS session and invoke command. Enter PS session, you can enter PS session into only one machine at a time. Using invoke command,
Oh.
you can target 1000 machines.
Okay. So when do we? So if we wanted to do only certain actions on one machine, we are sure then we do get PS session.
Yeah. So see,
Okay.
enter PS session is as if you have logged into that computer and you have opened PowerShell window and running the commands. It is as good as that.
Okay.
But when you are running invoke command, you are just running one single command or one set of commands or executing one particular script file against that those multiple or single computer.
But even this can you scroll up please little bit? Can you scroll? Yeah. So even this invoke command actually. So what happens in this case actually? So this script is getting executed on a remote machine. So it's also opening your PowerShell window and it's executing it, right?
Yeah, internally it will use that PowerShell process. It will open that PowerShell process, but anybody who is logged into that machine will not be able to see any PowerShell window suddenly coming up, executing something and then disappearing. It will happen in the background.
Okay, but in case of PS session, they can see it?
No, even in case of PS session. Do you know about Telnet?
Yes.
So it is like Telnet only.
Okay, so we are connecting the remote machine from here and doing everything from
Yeah,
here.
you are just connecting to the remote shell
Okay.
like you do in Telnet. When you do Telnet to a machine, you connect to that machine remotely to the command prompt, right? So in this case, you are connecting to the PowerShell command prompt of the remote machine.
Okay, and I think we spoke about this. I'm not sure. So if we have multiple machines, and then you said we can put all of them in a notepad, and then we can get the computer name from that list. So what if all of them have different credentials? Actually, if they have a support user, then it's fine. If they have a different credentials, then how do we go about it?
So, okay, let me show you one example. Based on that, you need to build your logic in such a way that it will generate credential objects for every single machine that you're trying to connect. Okay, for that case,
Okay.
you have to use a credential object. Let me show you how to create a credential object. So in this case, the username is administrator. I am creating variables. Username is, and I will give the domain name also. This is the username, and let me show you password using which we are connecting to that virtual machine is. Now since this password has a special character that is $, you should keep it in single quotes so that $ will not have a special meaning. Okay, otherwise this $ will be considered as a variable. When you put it inside single quotes, it will be considered as the literal string. Okay, now you have to convert this username and password into a credential object. How do you create a credential object? For that, first you need to convert the password into a secure string. $secure password. is equal to convert to secure string hyphen string as dollar password as plain text hyphen float. Now your password, which was in a plain text, will get converted into a secure text. Now if you check dollar secure password, you won't be able to see what is the password. You have converted that into a secure string. Now let me show you how do you convert it back from secure string, but you won't be able to see the original text. Convert from secure string hyphen secure string as dollar secure password. So your password is converted into this encrypted format. Okay, so we don't have to worry about, I'm just showing you how does it look like. You don't need to worry about this command. Only these steps are required. First, username, password, secure password. Okay, now how do you create the credential object? Dollar cred, you can give any name. I'm giving it dollar cred is equal to new object, sorry, get hyphen credential hyphen there are two ways. Let me show you simple way. Since we are putting it manually inside these variables, let me show you the second way. New object hyphen type name PS credential and in argument list I will give dollar username comma dollar secure password. Now if you give dollar cred, you will get the credential object wherein you will have the username and password inside that credential object. Now this credential object you can use for any connection now. So this way you have to first create a credential object. You can store the username, password and the server name in a CSV file. So every line in that CSV file will give you three things: the server name, username for that server and the password for that server. So by reading that CSV file you can create this credential object for every server and pass it to that particular server. That will be a script that you need to write. Okay.
So we'll have to build a looping mechanism to
Yes.
read this, generate these credentials for every server, and then invoke the command just for that appropriate server.
Yes. So how do you pass this credential object? While connecting that server through invoke command or any other command, you can use hyphen credential as dollar cred. You can pass that credential object that you have created successful. Got it? So in this session we have seen the basics of remoting, how to enable remoting. We have seen the overview of WinRM, how to enable it through group policy, one-to-one using enter PS session, and one-to-many using invoke command, and we have seen what is the meaning of deserialized object and why.
Chandra, I wanted to ask you one thing in the script that you just, the object that you generated for
Okay.
credentials. So how does it decode that? How does it, decode that password string? How does it happen on the other side?
So that is the that is taken care by PowerShell.
Okay, so it knows the inbuilt and outbuilt mechanism, so it takes care of it. You
Yeah,
don't have to.
and you cannot get into that because of the security reasons, obviously, right?
Right. But is it mandatory to pass that credential as secured string, or can we just pass it as a plain string as well? Is it optional, or is it up to us, or is it
No.
enforced?
It is required to pass it as a secure string, because if you give plain password, it will not carry it over the network. It is a security risk,
Okay.
right? It is mandatory for you to give secure string. Now,
Okay.
let me show you another. See, this is when you have to create credential objects through script for multiple servers. So this is the way you will do it. First, capturing the username in one variable, then password in another variable, converting that password into a secure password using convert to secure string, then using it with while creating the credential object using new object type ps credential. But if you want to do it simply by asking you for the username and password, you can use get hyphen credential, or you can put any message, login. So here you can provide username itpogo.com / administrator. Now in the same variable, same thing is captured through that GUI box. But think about this, when you have to connect to say 10,000 servers to perform something, are you going to answer that GUI 10,000 times? No, right? It is not feasible. Instead, you will write a script logic which will read this CSV file for each server, what is the username and password, and based on this logic, it will create a new credential object. So I have just shown you in step-by-step format to help you understand what is going on. But if you have to do that from a CSV file, you have to write a logic which will loop through every item, and you don't need to do it in a step-by-step format. Here, username, how will you get it? Whatever CSV you are importing, that object dot username, object dot, and here you can convert it to secure password here itself. You can put this command as a parenthetical command here and use the password which is coming from the CSV file. Okay, let me stop the recording of this.